Hi everyone, this is Ashish. Today we are going to discuss about building custom image on Azure using infrastructure as code or configuration as code. So what do we mean by custom image? So custom image is, as you know, so when you deploy VM on Azure, so you know when you deploy using Terraform or Bicep or Azure Bicep or PowerShell or any tool you use, you create a VM, yeah. So and then VM can be one of the OS like VM can be deployed with one of the OS, so it can be Windows, it can be Ubuntu, or it can be any other OS image available based on the cloud. In general, right now we are talking about Azure. So whatever the image you have, you pick one of the operating system and then you create a VM on top, using Terraform or Bicep or even PowerShell or Azure CLI. Doesn't matter. It depends upon what kind of tooling you are using. So it can be Azure CLI, it can be PowerShell, it can be Bicep, it can be Terraform, or it can be another scripting or programming language using SDK or whatever. So you create a VM, but that's not really solves your problem. You have to install applications on top of it. So you may need some libraries like maybe if we are talking about Ubuntu or any Linux system, we may need some libraries or some tools like Nginx or Apache. Or when we are talking about Windows, we may need certain runtime that needs to be installed on Windows to be able to make use of this VM. And then on top of it, so you first have to have the of course the VM that you get from Azure. Then on top of it you install some runtime, and then you install or host your application, and then again this application might need certain further requirement, like you may need IIS, you may need Apache, or you may need other things, or configure certificates, configure things. So all these things you need to configure on your VM. Now if you are using typical infrastructure as code approach, then you might be doing all these things when you deploy your VM. Now what happens is that if you do this, it takes, first of all, it will take a lot of time when you deploy your application from environment to environment, because every time you duplicate these steps, which are installing some runtime, installing applications, installing tooling and all. So instead of that, what you do is, so here you are using an image that is coming directly from Microsoft. Now what you do is you create your custom image. And custom image, sometimes they call it golden image. So what do you mean by golden image or custom image? And golden image and custom image is not really something new. It has been used in the industry for quite long time. So previously only the process or the tooling changes based on, if you are using cloud, then you might be having some other tooling. If you're using on-prem systems, you might be using some other system, but the concept remains same, that you have a base image, something like Windows or Ubuntu or any other operating system, and then on top of it you add certain things that are always required for your application. So it can be Java runtime, it can be .NET runtime, it can be Apache, it can be Nginx, it can be any other thing. So you install these things and then you prep this VM, and then you save this image, and then you have this image, and now next time when you create a VM, you don't create it from here or from the bare minimum. You refer this image, custom image, to create your VM, and in that process you save time on installing these application again, because it is already baked into this particular image, and that's what we call custom image or golden image. Now how do we do this with infrastructure as code, or what are the options you have when you talk about infrastructure as code? Let's talk about a tool named, let me go to this. So we are talking about Packer. Oops. So if you go to the Packer, oh, what is this? Terraform Packer. So if you go to this Packer, this particular tool is used for building your building images, custom images. Now first you need to have this Packer based on the system you are using locally for developing your application. You can use any of the approach. If you are on Mac OS, so I followed the Mac OS option. If you are on Windows, then you can use Chocolatey package manager to install Packer. If you don't have Chocolatey, you can go there and install Chocolatey on your Windows system. It's very straightforward. It's free, at least for personal uses. Then they have some enterprise program as well. But anyway, Chocolatey is another way to install, and then you have this Linux option. So we installed it with Mac OS. We have already installed it, and it's very simple. You just do this brew install HashiCorp tab Packer, and then it installs Packer on the local system. Now once you have Packer installed, you create a configuration file. So how do we create a configuration file? So for configuration file, I'm going to create a file. So suppose I create a packer.scl. So it has to the extension should be HCL, HashiCorp language. So this is the language for this is Terraform HashiCorp language. They have their own syntax, and here I have build already developed, and I will just paste it over here. So this is the typical Packer configuration for building Azure VM, and let me fix this. Why do, or you can say TP do, and similarly here. Yeah, so I'll come. So the first part is, it may look like, if you are already familiar with Terraform, it may look like Terraform to you, because it's coming from the same vendor. They have the similar syntax, but yes, it has its own blocks that you need to know. So the first thing is Packer. So you need to tell what are the things you need for this configuration. Just like in Terraform, you have provider blocks. So here you need a plugin, and the plugin you need is this Azure plugin, which gives you this particular block. available to you, and we will soon talk about it. So this is the first thing you need to have. Then you have source, and then in the source you have Azure ARM plugin. So this plugin is coming from this, and if you go to this, and actually they have this integration, and if you go to the integration part and if you search Azure, you will see the different options to install this plugin. So you have this option that we are using, or you can also use this approach as well, but we are using this option. So once you have configured this, then you can run packer init to configure packer. We'll run in a bit this configuration to initialize. So it is like, I mean, again, if you are familiar with Terraform, it's again very much similar to that. Now once you have this packer plugin configured, then we are configuring the VM configuration. So in the VM, you can see in our base image is Ubuntu image. So this is the base image we are using. The first option which says use Azure CLI auth. So when we will use packer commands and when we communicate to Azure for creating images, then it will need to connect to the Azure to do all the stuff that you need to have. I mean, you need to do to create the custom image. So when you create a custom image, what happens is that let me open this page. So when you create a custom image, so what happens is that you have to first create a VM, of course. Then you have to install applications on or run commands over here to customize it, and then you do some step, and then you get a snapshot or image of this VM, which is called golden image. So you have to have first you have to deploy a VM first to do the customization, and that's the part usually typically was done manually before packer, or even now if you are not using packer, then you have to do all this stuff yourself. But what packer does is you just tell what kind of VM you need, what kind of things you need to run, and then it will make sure that it will connect to the Azure, create the VM, do the customization, prepare the build, and get the image, and if it is successful, then publish the image, and then all these steps are automated for you if you are using packer. Otherwise all these steps needs to be done by you, scripted by you. If you are using PowerShell, or if you are using combination of PowerShell and Bicep or Terraform or whatever, you have to do this manually or partially automated way. And then again you have to control the flow. If something fails here, then what should happen, how to make sure that all the resources are deleted, including VM and the associated resources like network card and all those stuff. So you need to take care of all those things if you are not using something called packer. This is the benefit of packer, that you don't have to worry about what happens if something fails. It will take care of it in a very automated way. Now coming back to the packer configuration. Yes, so the first thing is that use Azure CLI auth. So packer gives you various options to authenticate with Azure. This is one of the option where you can log into the Azure CLI in the command line or in the terminal, and then packer can use the same session to configure or to connect to the Azure. Then what image you will use as a base image. So you can have Windows Server, or you can have Ubuntu, or I mean whatever the image is are offered by Microsoft Gallery, you can use that one. Then image publisher, typically whatever the publisher is. Then SKU and location, like which location you are going to deploy this VM to customize it. And then what is the manage image name. So this is something that you can configure yourself. So it is the name of the image that will be available for you to later utilize to create the VM. So this is the image name. So usually when you create VM from the Microsoft library, you use this image name. Now once you have customized, you will have a new image which is custom for you, and then you can use this one. And then which resource group where this image will be available, or I mean will be deployed. Then OS type, subscription ID, tenant ID, the image size, what would be the image size when you are configuring it. Then in the build, you tell which sources to use. So source you have already configured here. Yeah. Then you are telling this source you need to build. So build command is the packer command, which will pick from here, and then it will pick. Then there is provisioner. So once you have deployed your VM, once the VM has been deployed, you use provisioners to do the next step. So for example, here we are saying once VM is deployed, we run couple of shell commands to do these stuff. Yeah. Then we are running an inline bash command to update the apt-get, then upgrade it, then install nginx on the Ubuntu. So we are just giving a very simple example over here. Here you can have your custom bash shell script, you can have custom scripts here or custom commands here that you can run, and even you have other provisioners like Ansible, where you can provide a Ansible playbook which will run after VM has been created. Then Ansible will configure all the software you need. So for example, it will configure nginx or Apache, then it will customize it as per your requirement. Then it will copy certain application files if you need, or some other files that you need, and then it will finish the final part. So this is how this packer configuration file works. Now let's try to run this packer file. Now to run it, let me get the terminal. So packer has a command called build. Let me go to this, and packer, yeah, and there should be documentation, CLI, and like the first thing you need to do is packer init. So packer init will download or configure the library or the plugin that you need. So first let's do the packer. Oops, actually you need to tell packer init into it's here. Oops, invalid, looking for where what happened? Messed up. Where have I messed up? Line 1. Oh, okay. Should be underscore. And let's, yep. So it has configured the plugin. Now let's run. Now next thing we need to run is packer build. So packer build is another command which will build this file, and which will create the image for us. Before we create the image, let's create something. So here you can see we are providing a resource group name, so we have to create this resource group first. So let's go ahead and create this resource group, easy group, and let's create name, and the name will be this, and location East US is fine. So we are creating a resource group first because it will look for that resource group where it will deploy the image. So we will create the resource group first, and since we are already logged in, we have got the resource group now. So let's go ahead and look at the portal. And if you go to the resource group, we will see the resource group named ADB image, and we should not see anything over here because we have not created yet. So now we will run packer build to HCL. So this should create the image. First create the VM, then do the stuff as explained in the provisioner file. So it should do this particular command should start the process. Let's go ahead and run this. Oops, again. Okay. Think we missed. Okay. Okay. So the issue is here. Okay, so it's running the VM, and as you can see, it's deploying image, and it says, department, engineering, task, image deployment. So all these things are configured over here. Right, so let this finish. Once this will finish, it will create an image over here, so we should be able to see the image soon. Let's wait for some time. it's working. Then it goes, and as you can see now it's connected using SSH, and then now it's running the commands using the shell script. So it's updating the Ubuntu, it's installing the updates and all whatever we have mentioned over here. So it's doing all its work, and then it will install the Nginx, and we will soon see that. So this right now we are using provisioner for the using the provisioner of shell, but you can use other provisioners like Ansible. So you can install the plugin for Ansible, and then you can use this as a provisioner in your Packer configuration. We will show something. So we have two types of provisioner with Ansible plugin. So one provisioner is Ansible local, and another provisioner is Ansible. So what is the difference between Ansible local and Ansible is that Ansible local runs the Ansible playbook that you provide. So this Ansible playbook will run on the guest machine. So it will go to the machine that has been created. So this machine that we are talking about, and it will run the playbook on that machine locally. So to be able to use Ansible local, you first have to install Ansible on the guest VM. So you still have to use some provisioner like shell to install the Ansible, and then next provisioner can be Ansible local, which will run the Ansible playbook. However, the another provisioner is it runs the playbook from the local, from your development machine, or if you are using a CI/CD, then build machine to the server. So it again takes the SSH connection but executes the Ansible playbook through the SSH server to the machine being provisioned by Packer. So it doesn't need it doesn't need you to install Ansible on the guest VM. That is the major difference between these two provisioners. You can use Ansible local or Ansible based on which one fits you. And the way to use is very simple, that you can use the provisioner like this. So you can just like shell, we have for shell we used this shell. So instead of shell, you will have Ansible over here, and then you can provide the playbook file argument with the path to the playbook file that you have, and then again you can use extra argument for extra variables and all. This is how you can use Ansible, and there are other configuration or integration with you can search what are the options you have for. They have a lot of options like Docker, Git, another cloud providers. So let's go ahead and look what's happening. So it's deleting the temporary VM. So that's the benefit of using Packer. So it has deployed the VM, and it has deployed the VM in a temporary resource group, and you can see all this happening here. So it has created a resource group like this. You don't have to worry about that. It will delete this temporary resource group itself. It has created the deployment. It is figuring out everything. Then it got the IP address. It SSH into it. Then install the commands or the whatever you have provided in the provisioner. It runs through that. So this particular part is very interesting in terms of configuration as code, that if you have like a lot of configuration that you do on your virtual machine once it is deployed on Azure, and essentially if you are using it in production, you might be doing a lot of configuration after installing VM, because VM comes with a with a typical OS only. I mean, if you are running a production system, you might be installing a couple of runtimes, a lot of applications to make sure, or the dependencies on the VM, and then you again copy or install your applications that you are hosting on that VM. So all those things you can configure like a configuration as code here, if it is simple one, or you can have a shell script, or you can have Ansible playbook or some things like that. Now it has deleted and it is telling us what is the image name. And if we go to the resource group and refresh, we have this image now, and you can see this image. It's a Linux based image. It has all the details that we have provided. It has added the tag over here, and we can now use this image to deploy a VM. Now to deploy a VM, let's go ahead and deploy this. So let me create, actually I have the command. Oops. And so to create the VM, we already have the command on Notepad here. So I'll just copy from here. And paste it over here. So it's again very simple command to create a VM, create a Linux VM, but we are using an image that we have created now. And then of course the resource group where we are creating the VM, the name will be my VM, or it can be whatever, it can be ADP VM or whatever. The important part over here is this this parameter, where image is not typically Ubuntu 22 or something that you do for image from Microsoft. We are providing a custom image name over here. And the thing that we have done is, if we have if our image is ready, then it should already have Nginx installed, and we should be able to see the Nginx homepage here once we have created the VM. So let's go ahead and first create the VM. So it's creating the VM, as you can see. So let's wait for this to create. Then temporarily we will open port 80 so that we can access the VM on its public IP address. Usually in production you won't expose your VM directly using public IP. You will have something like application gateway, load balancer, front door, or traffic manager, or whatever is appropriate for your workload. Here we are just testing, so we will use a public IP address. Let's wait for this to finish. So far, if we see, we only have image over here. Now we are deploying a VM, so soon there will be a VM over here, and possibly it has already created. Yep. So you can see there are a couple of resources created, VM is there, and if we go here, it has already created the VM. All we have to do is we have to open the port 80 over here so that we can access the public IP. So this is the public IP, and we can even see that here on the image on the VM. So if we go to the VM, copy this, go there and paste here. It may take a while, but you have the Nginx. So I mean, we have given a very simple example over here, and we have just customized, not really a production scenario, but it's just like, give you the idea how do you create a custom image using Packer on Azure, uh, you know in a very simple way. In practically, you will have a lot of commands over here. I mean, little bit of more practical tooling other than Nginx. You will have a couple of libraries that is required for your application, if it is a PHP application or a Java application or a .NET Core application. So you will have a couple of libraries that you need to have as a dependency. You will have that here. Or if you are more of like a configuration as a code thing, then you will have a playbook somewhere in this library, I mean in this folder, and you call that playbook and install the packages using the Ansible or other configuration manager tool that is available with the integration of Packer. So that's how you use Packer with Ansible, uh, with the Azure. Okay, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you find this helpful for you. Let's meet again for another tutorial on Azure.